We're going to go to 12.3. And Mr. Stacy, I'm going to take a point of privilege and ask, can the 12.3, 12.4, and 12.5, can I bundle those and go ahead and read all three, and then you'll talk about all three together, or should we do them separately?
That was my plan.
Okay, let's bundle those. So we're going to do first reading on policy, and it has not been assigned a code yet. That's why it's to be determined. Employee use of animals in schools, that's for employees. We're going to have first reading of the policy, again, to be determined. Student use of animals in schools. And then last but not least, we're going to have visitor use of animals in schools. And Mr. Stacy is going to introduce this first reading and talk about this. And then once we do that, we'll open it up for discussion. So, Mr. Stacy?
Thank you. So I'm bringing to you for first reading 3 other policies as they relate to animals in schools. They are a J policy, which is student use of animals, a K policy, visitor use of animals, and a G policy, which is employee use of animals. And so the other policy that you adopted tonight dealt with instruction. These are like emotional support, or not bad word, service animals, and that students may need. And so you have, and I've included the internal procedures for approval as they relate to the policies. These proposed policies have been shared with our attorneys and our administrators for review. And as with the other policy regarding animals in schools, they're new policies, so we'll need to get the South Carolina School Boards Association to codify them. And so that's why they are to be named as far as the code.
Great, okay. And thank you for bringing that to us tonight. I hope we've got involved counseling and some teachers' committees on.
Yes, we had the same committee that did the instruction in schools policy.
Them as well.
They did these 3 as well. We just wanted to bring them to you in pieces.
Great, okay. Board, so you've heard that from Mr. Stacy. Does anybody have any questions or comments tonight?
I do. Okay. This committee, are there any members of the community?
No.
No. Okay. I know part of the revision process includes advisory councils when we're referring to students and staff, but this policy includes visitors. So how do we plan on getting community feedback on that?
Really what we're trying to do is make sure we just follow the letter of the law. And so that was kind of, I mean, we've had the attorneys review it, and Meredith has been instrumental in making, putting it together. So, I mean, I can share it with some advisory councils between now and next reading.
And what the law we're talking about, is that Americans with Disabilities
Yes,
Act?
ma'am.
Is that the law we're adhering to?
Okay, I've got another question. The policy says service animal means any dog individually trained, and so on. But the internal procedures defines in more detail what a service animal is. Why didn't we include that in the policy?
My thought there is that when they apply to use, when they fill out the forms to apply, that really kind of defines what we mean by service animal versus emotional support animal. And I think we're going to run into some issues where you can get an emotional support certificate by just mailing something into the internet. And so we got to make sure that we're talking about an animal that truly provides a service for whoever's using it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's what I was saying. I think that we could have it both places, but I'd also like to see the definition not only in the internal procedures, but in the policy as well.
Okay. Do you mind emailing me your?
Yeah, I can do that.
And I'll be more than happy to look at it.
Any other questions or comments, Board? Dr. Guyton?
I think the real rub is going to lie in the comfort or emotional support animal. I mean, I think the service animal is going to be pretty much a universally accepted kind of thing. It's the emotional support animal, I think, is where we'll see probably the most questions or interpretation there, if you will. I guess I would be curious as to when on your, I guess it's the page 2, second paragraph, when you're talking about the IEP or 504 team decides the animal is necessary for the student to receive a free and appropriate public education, I would be curious as to what's the mechanism by which it's going to be allowed or disallowed, because I think the tighter you make that, the less problematic it could be in the future. Just based off what I see in the community right now. So that would be my only advice on the 504, the IEP.
Thank you.
Might help us to look at what the airlines are doing, because I know they've had peacocks and pigs and everything else brought on board, and it's a very hard thing to get your arms around.
think
Anything else, board, before we move on? Mr. Stacy, did you want to say anything
No,
else?
we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Board, at this time, we'll go to 12.6, which is first reading of policy GBEB, employee conduct. And again, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Stacy.
Okay, so I'm bringing to you for first reading policy GBEB, employee conduct. This will replace an existing policy. It has been updated using the South Carolina School Board Association model policy, and it includes a reference to our recently adopted Code of Excellence. In addition, it provides more detail in regard to actions that are considered misconduct while on or off district premises. This policy has been reviewed by our attorneys, and it has been presented to our administrators for their review. So I'm presenting to you for first reading policy GBEB, employee conduct, for your consideration, reaction, and review.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Stacy. Are there any comments or questions regarding this tonight, board?
I have a couple. So I reviewed several other districts' GBEB policy, and our district is the only one that includes detailed social media language. Both paragraph 3 and the first sentence in this paragraph that talks about social media usage, and it's already included in here, and it's addressed in other policies. I just think our district has a fear of their employees' use of social media. I don't really see the need if you go down to paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the second sentence where it starts, social media use has the potential to result in disruption of the school environment and/or the workplace and can be in violation of board policy. And like I said, that's covered elsewhere, so I don't think the rest of that paragraph is necessary.
Can you back up just 1 second? I just pulled it up. Tell me again where you are.
So I'm on paragraph 5, and it would be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. And it's this, well, actually, it's probably second sentence. Social media use has the potential to result in disruption of the school environment.
Okay.
Yes. I'm just saying, I don't think all that is necessary. I think this is just, a policy developed out of fear of employees using social media. Because we've addressed social media elsewhere in policy, and it's also addressed in the third paragraph of this policy and in the first sentence of that one paragraph I was just talking about.
Okay.
But aren't we trying to codify with the School Board Association in their verbiage?
Yes, it's matched up with that policy. I think the red, though, is our input into that policy. And again, that's on the advice of our attorneys, but I'll be more than happy to review that again with them.
Like I said, I pulled up other districts' policies today, just, 5 or 6 of them, and none of them had that language in there.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, as a former employee, I just know that I've been called down to this district office and supervisor's office, and it's not necessarily anything I was saying wrong. They just don't like you on social media.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I just don't agree with having that in the policy.
Yes, ma'am.
So, on to page 2, where it says neglect of duty, and the following list includes, but is not limited to, actions that are considered misconduct while on duty or off district premises. And down there, a little further, where it says neglect of duty, including but not limited to failure to follow students' IEP or 504, leaving students unsupervised, failure to discipline with consistency, and/or failure to maintain proper building or classroom discipline, failure to take appropriate affirmative action when confronted with or after witnessing a situation in which a student is at risk of abuse or mental or physical injury, and/or inability or failure to effectively plan and present an organized lesson plan. I know one complaint of teachers is that they aren't considered professionals, and I just think that this is a prime example when we're saying they can't maintain proper discipline or effectively plan. Not only that, I think most of that is just subjective. And I hate to leave the door wide open.
Now, that is part of the model policy from the South Carolina School Boards Association, because that's in black, so that's verbatim from what they recommend.
Well, I mean, it may be, but at the districts I looked at, I didn't see that in their policies either. So somewhere along the way, I guess, they decided to amend that part. And then on page 3, when we're about 8 or 9 dots down, disclosing personal, sexual, family, employment, or other private concerns to students or others. I'm just wondering why "or others" is included in there.
Well, it could be that they were doing it with another teacher, another staff member on campus. I would think that's what we would mean by others,
Or parents.
or a parent.
But if they're your own personal concerns,
If you-
I mean, maybe it just needs to be reworded to say disclosing personal student information or.
It
I don't-
really, that really relates to them disclosing their own personal information. It can become very uncomfortable for employees if they're listening to someone else that's continuing to just disclose their information
Or others. I don't know. I mean.
to students or others. So if
Right,
you're, if
so
you're
you're
a t-
just-
if you're a teacher on a teaching team and one teacher is disclosing their personal information to that other teacher, it can become very disruptive.
Okay,
We've actually had that situation.
okay. Oh, and another thing, let's see here. I know I've been asking for a anti-bullying retaliation in the workplace policy. Richland 2 and their policy, GBEB, they have a section that says, employees will not engage in unprofessional behavior toward other employees, students, parent, legal guardians, or others. Particularly supervisors will not entreat employees under their supervision in a belittling, demeaning, or disrespectful manner, including verbal and/or written statements, especially within the hearing of students, other employees, or others. I'd like to see some of that language in this policy if
Okay.
we're not going to have a separate policy.
All right. I can look at that.
Okay, I'll email it to you.
I'm sorry?
I said I'll email it to you with the other
Thank you
stuff.
so much. That'd be awesome.
Board, any other questions or comments regarding policy GBEB, employee conduct? We will go back over that next month, and Mr. Stacy will update us. So depending on where we are on that, we hopefully will take a vote next month and do that.